pre-calcers, we are on section 5.2. We're going to talk about the exponential function y equals e to the x. So first thing we're going to do is talk about what is e. So I found this little blurb about where the letter e came from. It's from Euler, but there's actually an interesting reason about it. I know some of you might not be interested, but it's pretty cool. There's no general consensus about why he chose E. Some thought it was because an unused letter. You know, A, B, C, and D are used a lot in equations. But anyone else thinks it might be because it's the initial of his name. But he's a modest man. So, if anything, that could just make you smile. It's just a fun fact. So let's start off with what is E. So using our calculator, we're going to set it up. The buttons on your calculator, some of you might not know, but E is actually a button you can use. You're going to press the second key, and then it is the division key. When you press second, it's going to go to the blue or green, depending on your calculator, and right above the division sign is a little e. So type that into your calculator, and this is the decimal you should be getting. 2.7182818 blah 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 blah. That's the approximation. Similarly, like with pi, it's 3.14 blah blah blah. E is the same thing, it's an actual value. So normally we say E is about 2.7. Now we're going to actually graph what this exponential function looks like. We're going to mention the domain, range, x-intercept, asymptotes, all that fun stuff. So to start off, we're going to do our xy table. We don't know what it's going to look like yet, so we're going to start off with a nice xy table. We need at least 3 points. I like to pick pretty much any values, right? We're picking a value that we can raise e to. So what if I chose 0? If I go back to the equation above, y equals e to the x, I know plugging in 0 means I'm doing e to the 0. Think back to our notes. Anything raised to the 0 power is 1. If I plug in 1, y would equal e to the first. Well, e to the first we know is about 2.7. If I input 2, y equals e squared. Squaring 2.7, you get about 7.29. So these are 3 values that I can graph. I can go 0, 1, 1, about 2.7, and 2 is all the way up at 7.29. Okay, that gets pretty big. Now, I didn't choose any negative numbers. Probably should do that. You want to see what it looks like on both sides of the y-axis. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to plug in, let's just say -1. Well, if you plug in -1, that would be really 1 over e, negative exponent, 1 over e. So if I do 1 divided by e, I get about 0.37. So at -1, 0.37. You could go further, but I'm kind of already seeing a pattern. So if I'm going to connect these, nice exponential curve would look like so. Feel free to do more points if you want to make sure, but this is the point, the graph that I'm seeing. The domain, it doesn't look like there's any restrictions, so -infinity to infinity. Now the range. If you kept choosing negative x values, maybe -2, -3, -10, -100, all those numbers, you will know that it's never gonna touch 0. So it's actually gonna be 0 to infinity is your possible y values. That means if it doesn't cross that axis, then there's no x-intercept. The y-intercept is right here, 0, 1. And then I already hinted to the fact that the asymptote is going to be this nice horizontal line at y equals 0. Now some of you might not want to take my word for it that it's going to never cross the x-axis. So what I'm going to have you do is actually type it in your calculator. We're going to go to y equals, you're going to type e, which is second division, and do the little caret button raised to x. When you graph that, you should see this type of curve on your calculator. In order to look at the table of values, and this is important, I want everyone to try this, to see the table of values, you are going to go to second table. So you're going to go to second, then on the top, the button is graph, that gives you table, I'm sorry. So your second graph will give you that table of values. You can see as you go into a negative x, all the way to negative x, it's going to get super close to 0, but it will never cross. Let's go ahead and do one more, and then we're actually done with this video. So we're now going to sketch the graph of y equals e minus e raised to the negative x. So a little bit more complicated, but we're going to treat it exactly like we did before. We'll start with an xy table. I'm going to pick some values. This time I'm going to show some negative at the beginning. So let's plug in -1. Looking at this equation, I would be plugging in y is e minus e to the -1. So it's really e minus e to the first power. So that's just 0. So -1, 0. Notice, okay, already it's crossing that asymptote that we made before, so it's going to look a little different. What if I plug in 0? Again, I go right back to the equation at the beginning, and I'm just plugging in 0 for x. So I'd have e minus e to the -0. Anything raised to the 0 power is 1. So you get actually the term e minus 1. Using our approximation, this is going to be about 1.7. So 0, 1.7. Okay, I can possibly see this curve. Let's do another point just to make sure. Plug in 1. This will give you e minus, whenever you have a negative exponent, bring it to the bottom. Put that in your calculator, you'll get about 2.3. So at 1, you're 1.2.3. Oh, interesting. I might actually pick one more point. Go ahead, plug in 2, see what you get. That's going to be e minus e raised to the -2. You're going to get 2.58. I'm getting even closer. And if you still can't see the picture, keep going with x and y values. Okay? You could also put it in your calculator and see that it's actually never going to cross this asymptote right here. The graph is going to get super close, hug it, but it will actually never cross. So my domain, we have no restrictions. The range, we will. You can go from -infinity all the way up to, I apologize, I graphed that incorrectly. We don't know this yet, I'm sorry. Jump the gun. Plug in more values. Go to the calculator table. You're gonna see it's gonna actually be, I'm gonna make it a little, there we go. It's gonna actually stop at E. A little bit smaller than 3. So my idea was 3, and I'm like, oh, need to check. Right, go to the table. See what it gets really, really close to. Our x-intercept, we know that. That is -1, 0. Y-intercept is right here. So you can just write it as 0, E minus 1, or you could write the decimal. And then this will be that asymptote. Okay. Use your calculator to help you. If you need any help with the second graph button, getting the table, let me know. Otherwise, this is day 2.